The Sega Saturn is basically the unloved middle child of Sega's consoles, with most of its heavy hitters either never leaving Japan like Sakura Wars or being pretty niche in their own right like Enemy Zero. Hell, Panzer Dragoon Saga, a game that I've gushed about at length before, is notoriously one of the most rare and expensive video games of that entire generation. Pair that with the system being infamously pretty difficult to emulate for almost 20 years, and it's not hard to tell why so many of its games found their obscurity. And yet I believe that this system had some extremely interesting, ambitious, and undeservedly forgotten games on it. It also had a lot of games that really make you wonder how they came out at all. So, today I want to show you all some of the most interesting obscure games on the system. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And let me tell ya, today you might just learn about the best game you never knew existed. To ease ourselves in, let's start with something of a niche cult classic. Dark Savior is probably one of the most ambitious games on the system, and to this day, there's still nothing quite like it. For better, and most definitely for worse. In a lot of ways it feels like a successor to Landstalker, a very fondly remembered Mega Drive game that was pretty technically impressive all things considered. It also had a SNES spin-off named Lady Stalker, and look, this video isn't about that, so I won't bore you with the details. What's relevant is that all three games share a developer, namely Climax Entertainment. They also developed Steel Princess, a game I've covered before on this channel, but much more importantly, they share a writer, one Shinya Nishigaki, and if that name sounds familiar to you, that's not surprising. He is after all the man behind Blue Stinger and Illbleed, two of the most deranged games on the Dreamcast, and consequently, this game is also fucking insane. The game starts with a bounty hunter named Garion transporting Bylan, a convict meant to be executed on a prison island. It's kind of similar to the setup to Pitch Black, a movie that came out 4 years later, except that unlike Riddick, Bylan just broke out entirely on his own, killed the only other two bounty hunters on the ship, and is currently on his way to kill the captain. Welcome to the single most important part of this game, by the way. You better figure out the controls real fucking fast, bucko, because depending on how long it takes you to reach the captain's room, the entire game is going to be completely different. Route 1. Garion takes more than 5 minutes to arrive. Bylan kills the captain, escapes, makes his way to the island of Freeman, and starts killing everyone. This is the most bleak route and is focused entirely on tracking down Bylan. It's also the one most likely for you to be getting on your first playthrough. And the reason? This game plays like complete shit. It's almost got the same exact control scheme as Götzendiener, which is honestly one of the worst PC Engine games I've ever played, but that's a topic for another video. Everything takes place from an isometric perspective, but instead of Garion moving relative to the direction he's facing like you'd expect, he instead moves into the exact direction that you press on the D-pad, and because of the perspective, that's pretty much exclusively going to be in the diagonals. And doing that is incredibly uncomfortable to the thumbs. Now, the game does have 3D gamepad analog support, but that exclusively moves the camera. The game has 3 extremely distinct gameplay types, and for the first, puzzles, this is fine, if a little stiff. The second is the one that this entire opening section expects you to have mastery over though. Exploration and platforming. There's a million paths through the ship, and all of them lead to your end goal, but some are significantly faster than others, and all of them require you to do really strict jumps, which unfortunately is a recurring theme in all of the game's platforming sections. The third gameplay type is the combat. It's similar to a fighting game, and it's also fucking awful. It still takes place from an isometric view, but it's actually entirely 2D. You can jump, have a basic front and back attack, and can stand in place to charge your super attack. That's it. It honestly just evolves into bashing your head against the wall until you win. The rounds are also structured like Vampire Saviors, meaning that you don't heal after each one. Sometimes you can also capture the enemies you fight to have them fight for you later, and the constant swapping between the 3 gameplay styles is ambitious for sure, but also a genuine chore in execution. It took me a lot of attempts to be able to find the perfect path and reaching the time necessary for the other routes. Speaking of which, let's talk about those. Route 2. Garion arrives between 3 and 4.5 minutes, and fights Bylan before he can attack the captain, killing him. With the main villain dead, the game completely shifts tone to a conspiracy story about the prison itself. This is far and away the longest route, but if you ask me, it's also the most boring one. You get to Route 3 by reaching the captain in under 3.5 minutes. Bylan is locked out of the room and flees to the prison island. It starts off mostly similar to Route 1, but after beating it, you automatically enter Route 4. And this one is easily my favorite, because it's the one where Nishigaki's writing feels the strongest. There's really cool and completely patched moments here that I don't want to spoil, so honestly, I'd recommend playing this game for this route alone if you can stomach the controls. And lastly, you have Route 5, which you reach by dying to Bylan on Route 2. Garion is sent to hell and has to win a 10-round deathmatch where you don't get healed between the fights against the metaphysical manifestations of his past sins. This shit is bizarre enough that I don't even have a joke to make here. And that's Dark Savior, an extremely strange and ambitious game that even despite its very many issues, is at least insanely unique.
Good morning, everyone. This is your pilot speaking, and it is time to get funky. Funky.
Fantasy is quite possibly the shortest and one of the worst SRPGs I've ever played. And that really fucking sucks, because I mean, just look at it. But in a way, it's also impressive because, I mean, this is the same system with Run on it after all. Really, I don't think I need to point out that you're looking at really weird shit right now, so instead let me explain why you're looking at it. The game was developed by Tosei with direct involvement in publishing by Yoshimoto Kogyo, a Japanese comedy firm. Consequently, every single character is portrayed by a popular comedian at the time, hence the faces. The plot is one big parody, which I'm sure was obvious from the characters. I mean, god, I can't even list them all. Street Fighter, Sakura Wars, Golden Axe, Puyo Puyo Gundam to name a few. There's not really much of an overarching plot beyond parodying other stuff, and I really don't think anybody cares. It's just, oh no, Princess Bunny needs to reclaim her country.
And you gotta help us!
Gameplay-wise, this game is so goddamn slow, which would be a much bigger problem if it had any more levels than it actually does, but it only has 16 and only one ending, so it's not too bad. The real issue lies in something much worse that we'll get to in a bit. In order to summon units, you have to combine the characters with a certain monster type, and depending on the combination, they result with different abilities and stats. There's also a card system, but it's not really worth engaging in too much, as you never don't want to invest everything you have into the cards that boost your damage output. No, the real issue is that most of the time the end goal of a mission is to take out the enemy leader, but for some asinine reason they decided that they should be able to spawn in new enemies infinitely. And to make matters worse, the AI takes what feels like an eternity to do fucking anything. If I've primarily been using screenshots and early game footage to showcase shit, then it's probably because it's made me never want to touch this game again. It's a genuine chore and leads to the game feeling like it goes on for an eternity even though it's actually quite short. It's like they made an entire game out of the one part of Super Robot Wars that everyone hates, where you're about to beat a level and then, oh nope, just kidding, go fuck yourself, use 100 more enemies. I really cannot recommend this game to anybody. Except for Fire Emblem fans, they deserve to suffer. Keio Flying Squadron is probably one of the Sega CD's most popular cult classics, and hey, for a good reason too. It's a damn fine shmup with a really good soundtrack, yet somehow nobody seems to know that it not only had a party game spin-off on the PS1, but a full-blown sequel on the Saturn. And really, the reason for that is simple. This game blows harder than a hooker after dark. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but before I get to that, let's start with what is easily the highlight of the game instead. The sprite work is fantastic, everything is really expressive, and there's a bouncy movement to most animations. Unfortunately, the voice acting is fucking terrible.
Come to think of it, when I find the treasure, I might go to Jamaica for a while instead of going home. Yeah, man!
Now there are some stages that are still in the shoot 'em up style, and those are pretty fun, but unfortunately you'll be spending most of your time playing a really shitty platformer. Movement is a complete chore. By default, Rami is set to accelerate from a walk into a run over time, and it is some of the worst feeling movement I've ever experienced in a side-scroller, because there's a weird delay to everything that makes it feel really stiff. Thankfully, you can set the running to instead be either triggered by double tapping or by just holding down a button. You kill most enemies by jumping on their heads, though you can also find free weapons. A hammer that just kills enemies and can be thrown, an umbrella that you can open in order to avoid taking damage from falling objects, as well as letting you fall slower, and a bow and arrow. You can also pick up and throw several background items, but needless to say, the umbrella is the only one worth keeping at any point. Unfortunately, this leads me to another big problem with this and honestly, many other Saturn games. You have 6 face buttons. Use them! I just don't get why so many games on the system are so allergic to using more than 3 at a time. See, in order to pick up an item, you press the pickup button, and to use it, you press the attack button. Simple enough, but in order to put something back down, you have to crouch and then press the pickup button. If you want to throw the hammer, you have to press up and either pick up or attack. And doing the same with the umbrella will open and close it. This doesn't lead to any particularly frustrating moments or anything, but it's just really weird. You have all of these buttons. You didn't need to do that. Whenever you're holding an item and you're hit, you drop it. Get hit again, and you die. Unfortunately, you're gonna be dropping your items a lot due to a really awesome combination of delay and really inconsistent hitboxes. Every time you kill an enemy, you get a point added to your score, and the highest score you had at any point in your playthrough then unlocks something in the extras menu, and it never gets reset after death. However, for some asinine reason, they also added a million other things other than just getting hit that will also detract from your score. This includes, but is not limited to, jumping on enemies. Not all of them, mind you, just the passive ones. What makes them passive? I have no fucking idea. They still hurt you when you touch them, so I guess it's that they're not actively running towards you? Or maybe you're trying to use the umbrella for its intended purpose of deflecting attacks from above. Yeah, we're gonna detract points from that as well. The system makes zero fucking sense. Every couple stages you also end up in a bonus level of some sorts with a unique gimmick, the shmup being one of them. The music is also nowhere near as good as the first, and it has these oddly long pauses between stopping and starting over on every loop. Unfortunately, the entire game suffers from one more defining issue on top of all of the ones mentioned above that just makes it really unfun to play. It's so easy a toddler could beat it. I mean seriously, the only semblance of a challenge in this game is the hitboxes randomly deciding to kill you. There are difficulty options, sure, but they might as well not exist. All they do is change how many enemies are around and how fast weapons despawn. I mean, I guess that's more difficult, but it's more difficult in the same way that making you eat a soup with a fork is more difficult than just giving you a fucking spoon. It's still doable, just a lot more annoying. Ultimately, this is not a game I will ever be going back to, and it falling into obscurity was for the best. Shinrei Jusatsushi Tarōmaru is easily my favorite game in this video. I don't think it's the best, I'm saving that one for last, but it is my favorite. This is actually one of the rarest games on the Saturn, and for good reason too, as I'd say it's one of the most fun. It's kind of a run and gun, but in the same way that Contra Shattered Soldier is, wherein most of the game is actually just fighting a million bosses back to back while you're trying to save a random girl that's been kidnapped. Control-wise, however, I'd compare it to something like Elixir Dragoon. You aim at enemies with a reticle that locks onto them automatically, and you can swap between targets with the shoulder buttons. Sometimes it really doesn't like to play along, but most of the time it's very reliable. Your main attack is a beam of lightning that you can spam the shit out of. However, you also have a mindjack shot. If you hit an enemy with it repeatedly, or charge it and then attack, you mindjack your enemy, turning them into your ally until they die. You can also sacrifice them as an impromptu screen nuke. And if you're ever under fire yourself, you can use a parry to quickly save yourself from harm. You can also charge up the regular attack, and depending on the character you're playing, it has a different effect. Tarōmaru's acts as a sort of AoE attack, while Tenkai's just deals a shit ton of damage all at once. The key difference between the two is generally that Tarōmaru is faster and more agile, while Tenkai is tankier and slower, but he hits like a truck. I generally consider Tenkai the easier of the two, for sure. There's actually a shocking amount of movement options, from a run to a slide to multiple attacks you can do out of a run. Though running is entirely disabled when you're charging attacks, and so are all of the other movement options, except for the slide. It's honestly a pretty awkward control scheme at first, but man does it feel good once you master it. Unfortunately though, there is no auto fire button, so you really have to mash the shit out of the fire button. And I might have arthritis, but this game's worth it. And since the game is mostly just bosses, I'm happy to say that almost all of them are really enjoyable to fight. The game is full of really cool gimmicks and creative fights across the board. It's like every other fight has some totally unique mechanic to it, and while not all of them are winners, they never last long enough to get annoying. What helps is that the game is really pretty. The 2.5D scrolling effects on the stages are fantastic across the board, and there's so much going on at all times without it ever becoming overbearing. It's excellent. My only real issue is that the music loops a lot. There's not very many tracks in this game, and you're gonna be at a level for way longer than the music is playing, so it'll just hard cut and start over, which can get pretty irritating. But other than that, man, this game is an absolute blast. It's really hard, but a damn good time from start to finish, and at no point does it ever feel cheap or unfair. On my first few runs I kept struggling really hard, but after a while it just clicked, and in a single sitting I ended up beating it once as Tarōmaru and once as Tenkai. And while I feel like I can definitely beat this pretty consistently now, I doubt I would be able to beat it without dying even once. This has easily become one of my favorite games on the system, and unfortunately, it will never be re-released or see the recognition it deserves in any form, as it was developed by Time Warner Interactive, and it was their last game. And man, what a fucking title to go off of. I cannot even begin to fathom how you could possibly go from making nothing but sports games with names like Wayne Gretzky and the NHLPA All-Stars to making one of the most fun and creative 2D action games I've played in a very long time, with a team of only 9 actual developers no less. Hell, it's only 7 if we don't count composers. But here we are. And man, do I wish this team had gotten to do more stuff. But at least the director got to direct another game. Wait, what the fuck do you mean he directed Slayer's Wonderful? And now for something completely different. A triple feature of 1998 racing game visual novels. It might not have been the first 2 of them to come out, but it is the reason the other 2 exist, so let's start with Initial D, Kōdō Saisuku Densetsu. Truth be told, I've not watched Initial D, but I think if you're watching this video, you've definitely at least heard of the Eurobeat racing show. The story mode visual novel segments are basically a loose adaptation of the manga as far as I can tell, so let's not dwell on that. Let's instead focus on the actual gameplay. There's full analog control, which is always nice, and fundamentally, this is a seriously drift-heavy game. Kind of like Outrun 2, but unlike Outrun 2, the drifting is dedicated to a specific button. And look, maybe it's a skill issue, but I found everything feels way too slippery, and actually drifting is really inconsistent. It's like pressing the button for just a second to initiate a drift will almost always spin you out completely and make you do a total 180. But when you try to commit to the drift, it does the exact opposite and brings you to a complete halt. At no point in my entire playthrough was I ever able to find a decent balance. Though, while I'll admit that that's probably on me, what isn't is this game's way bigger other issue, the draw distance. You can barely see in front of your car, and it makes planning ahead when to drift a complete nightmare, completely destroying any fine you could otherwise have. This is only made worse by an issue that is prevalent in all 3 of these games. The rubber banding is insane. For context, rubber banding in a racing game means that if you're behind, your opponents slow down, and if you're in front, they speed up. Other than that, the original soundtrack for this game is pretty decent, though the definitive way to play all of these games is to just mute the music and put on some Eurobeat, or in this case specifically, get the mod that does it for you. But if there's one thing I have to give this game credit for, it's that the devs definitely learned. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, this game was made by Genki, who would go on to make Tokyo Extreme Racer. The second game I want to talk about is Code R. Sorry, of course I meant Code R. What the hell are you gonna make? Really rivaling BC on a man hunted by a tragic past with a film like Strength from Kindness but also a great sorrow. All this would change when he meets a girl named Dominique. These are residents of Dog Street, the Ouncer. Code R was developed by Quintet, you know, the ActRaiser and Terranigma devs. Needless to say, an RPG dev's only racing game being forgotten doesn't really bode well, and out of all three games, this is hands down the worst one. The visual novel segments have some dating sim elements to them, and you can change your driver's stats by making certain choices, but I would hesitate to actually call it one. But hey, at least your girlfriend is cute. The actual gameplay though is a total fucking mess. For one, I'm pretty sure that the game is held together by hot glue and spit, because, and I don't know if I have it recorded, but I swear at one point my car just randomly changed color. You can also put the camera into a bird's eye view, but the controls don't accommodate for that at all and it feels super awkward. Everything feels heavy as hell, while also being extremely floaty at the same time. It's hard to explain without actually having you play it. It's borderline impossible to get a grip on anything. The moment you tap the D-pad ever so slightly, you completely overshoot, and of course, this game wants to be just like Initial D and decides to be all about drifting, which is about as fun as you'd think it'd be with these controls. About the only consistent thing in this game is the overbearing SO advertisement. Why does a gas station need product placement? The last, and in my opinion most interesting game of the three, is Wangan Trial Love. The visual novel element in this game is a full-on proper dating sim. You gotta manage your daily schedule, and it will affect your stats for the next race, while you're also trying to manage the most bland and uninterestingly written love life ever put in a video game. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to become the ultimate racist. And look, on my first time playing, I kept everything at default and just went for it. Do not fucking do that. The default settings are quite possibly the worst controls I've ever experienced in a racing game. You steer extremely awkwardly with the shoulder buttons while trying to fight for your life with the manual shifting system. So the way it works is that you have to hold down the clutch button and then use the D-pad to shift your gear. It's exactly as awkward as it sounds, but after that I decided to mess around with the settings and I realized something. You can adjust every single aspect of the car except for its appearance. And I really do mean every aspect. Anything from the suspension to the goddamn anti-lock braking system. And amongst those options, you can get to choose between manual, semi-manual, and automatic shifting, each with either 4, 5, or 6 gears. And if you set the game to automatic, the controls become actually normal. It's a miracle, I know. Does this make the game good? No, but it makes it more enjoyable. Unfortunately, the constant swapping between the dating and driving is kind of a total mess and about as jarring as the random encounters in Racing Lagoon, and I really can't recommend any of these 3 games. But if you absolutely have to play one, then I guess just stick to the Initial D game. Rocks 6 = 6 is admittedly not a Sega Saturn exclusive, having been released on PS1 and Game Boy Color as well, but it is so bizarre that I just had to include it. As you can see, this is a falling block puzzle game, kind of like Puyo Puyo or Tetris. These kinds of games are generally known for really fun, simple and intuitive loops that allow you to strategize a lot while also growing harder over time, or giving you a competitive angle. This game looked at that and said, what if we did the exact opposite, and is so needlessly complex that it makes you wonder at what point this could possibly start being fun. Each block is a die phase from 1 to 6. To clear out a row, you have to start and end it with a block of the same number. However, the amount of blocks between those two must be the same as that number. This might sound weird, so let me get a specific example. If I want to clear a vertical row with a 6 at the bottom, I have to place 6 blocks of any kind on top of it, and then on top of that row of 7, I have to place a final block with a 6 on it. If the two 6 blocks share a color, the entire row disappears. If they don't, then only those 2 disappear. Similarly to Puyo, creating chains that clear multiple lines in a row also gives you a higher score. You do this until you have enough points to reach the next level, where the board is reset and the blocks start falling faster. Sometimes you also get blue balls from the game that clears any blocks that surround them. The issue is that because there's 3 colors starting at level 10 on top of the 6 different block types per color, and the fact that you have to keep track of each and every number and trying to set up high combos, it just becomes near impossible to keep track of everything. The game completely overwhelms you to the point where the only optimal way to play is to just build up several rows of nothing but the same number and hope for the best. I can't possibly see how this could ever be fun to anybody. It's just completely overwhelming. There is a reason why Tetris only uses the 7 tetriminos and Puyo only has 5 colors. Even Columns, a game I fucking hate, got that part right. Just stay away from this one, unless you're really into matching numbers for some reason. And now for what is hands down the best game on this entire list. Asuka 120% is a fighting game often credited as being one of, if not the first anime fighter subgenre fighting game, which would later be defined by Capcom's JoJo game and Guilty Gear. This segment isn't about that. Instead, it's about a game that took cues from Asuka and still predates both of those. Is a Saturn exclusive fighting game based on a manga by Masashi Ogawa, whose only real work of note is a Kinnikuman spin-off. Sonic Council was unfortunately never scanned in any way before, and I don't have the money to just import a copy, but from what I can gather, it's ostensibly a parody of fighting games in its own right. So getting one of its own seems like a perfect fit. And what a game it is. I mean, really, where do I even begin? Narratively, we've got an Asuka rival schools type of scenario going on, with a bunch of high schoolers beating the shit out of each other in a school fighting tournament. Except that these kids were born with the in-universe superpower of being real-life fighting game characters. The entire game oozes personality from every pore. The animations are really smooth. Every character gets their own name font, the sprites are simple but have so much personality. The music and intro animations tell you everything you need to know about every character immediately. And not only is the voice acting really good, but they brought in shockingly high-profile voice actors like Mitsuishi Kotono or Genda Tesho, and for some reason also made sure that every single seiyuu shares a first name with their character. It's such a minor detail, and they really didn't need to do that, but they did because it's fun. And honestly, because it's fun, feels like it was the single core philosophy that defined every single decision in this game, including for the gameplay itself. It's mostly a 6-button fighter with Street Fighter rules for light, medium, heavy kicks and punches, and most of the moves having similar inputs, and while it doesn't have air dashes, every other prominent feature that makes up an anime fighter is represented. Insane mobility? Absolutely. Lots of air game and air blocking? You bet. Psychotic combo strings? Wouldn't be the same without it. Unnecessarily many super meters? Oh buddy, you have 10, and they recharge so quickly you will never run out. And you're gonna be using them a lot. You're stuck in someone's insane rushdown pressure? Spend a meter to guard cancel out of there and initiate a counterattack. You just use the super? Most of them are arrow okay, just cancel into another one. Who gives a fuck? We ain't gonna stop you. So much shit links into each other, and you can cancel almost anything into anything else. We have completely shattered the skill ceiling. Sky's the limit, dude. I mean, seriously, this might just be one of the potentially sauciest fighting games I've ever played, and yet somehow, against all odds, it's mostly really balanced. As an example, let's take my favorite character, Yasunori Ishida. His normals are pretty decent, and he has an extremely useful counter, but what will make him completely broken in any other fighting game is his absolutely deranged movement speed combined with his only upper special. His quarter-circle forward kick has a completely different effect depending on which kick button you're using. The light version is a forward dashing kick, the medium one is a DP, and the heavy one is a far-traveling overhead. Every single one of these can chain into each other and isn't just usable in the air, but has a faster activation time when used mid-air as well. The combo potential on this guy is fucking insane, and as a K-Dash main, let me tell you, he's any rushdown player's wet dream. Hell, a friend even found a setup for a potential infinite with his insane chains that he calls the Raijin loop. So how come he's not completely overpowered? Simple, they completely cripple his damage. Ishida might have been gifted with divine speed and the greatest strings known to man, but in order to do what other characters can accomplish with just one special, he has to pull off an entire combo and a half. Really, my only gripe with this game is that the input buffer for chaining moves together feels extremely inconsistent. There were several times where I could swear I've done the exact same link, but it just didn't register the second time. Though it honestly never happened to me when playing against another person, only ever happening to me during story mode or training mode rounds. And whilst we're on the subject of other modes, let's go through them real quick. Obviously you have your standard versus and training modes, and there's also survival mode that works about as you'd expect. The story mode, despite being basically just an arcade mode, has some really fun presentation, showing itself off as a TV broadcast presented by a host, and it even uses your system's internal clock to show the real time for it as well. It's pretty fun. Beating this story mode with 5 characters unlocks the final boss as a playable character. Beating it as him unlocks a second secret character, and beating it as her unlocks the third and final one. And since we're already on the subject, let's do one thing that fighting game players and YouTubers have in common, and shove every character into a totally arbitrary tier list that I formed after consulting with the only other 2 people on this planet touched enough to lab this game and consider it for competitive environments. Hands down, the worst character in this game, one so bad she gets a whole tier to herself, is Kuro Naoko, the third secret character. But in order to understand what makes her so bad, we first need to look at Naoko herself. So we'll get back to Kuro when we get to her. After her is Aya. The best comparison I can make for her is to Lychee from BlazBlue, using a weapon completely disconnected from her actual body as her main means of attack. In Aya's case, it's a giant living demon pen. She's actually got pretty decent moves across the board, but the problem is she is completely reliant on the pen, and several of her moves separate the two for quite a while. And with no way of calling it back faster, she becomes a complete sitting duck with no means of defending herself. Naoko is relatively similar to Galford from Samurai Showdown, having a pet cat who makes up a majority of her game plan. She can seriously put on some pressure thanks to it, and has a flash knuckle type move that automatically corrects the direction she's facing while also being pretty fast. Unlike Aya, she also has a move that lets her call her cat back faster. One of her supers is a command grab that hurts her if you whiff it, but the other one is a pretty good barrage of aerial bombs. Now the reason why Kuro Naoko is so shit is because they wanted to do what Sam Free did with Bust Galford and took away her cat, but didn't give her any new moves to compensate. So because of that, she loses more than half her kit, and as if that wasn't enough, her flash knuckle no longer automatically turns around. It's like they made her terrible on purpose. Yuko is essentially the game's only charge character and Guile's stand-in. Her charges are shockingly short and her flash kick equivalent is pretty versatile, but she's handicapped hard entirely by virtue of being a charge character in a game this fast. Kumiko is a grappler, and her main command grab has some absolutely insane reach. Being a base baller, all of her grabs throw you to the next wall where you get bounced off like you just got hit by a 1-inch punch from 2002 Unlimited match, which is really good to combo off of. Kato is shockingly similar to Marisa from SF6, being able to charge up almost all of his main specials. He's also got a very strong unblockable super move. Unfortunately, his hurt box is so massive, any combo you can think of will probably work on him. Mika is kind of like Bao from KOF, I guess. Not really, but she is really annoying, and she has some insane pressure tools. Especially her super that constantly shifts between being a low and an overhead is evil. Next will be the second boss character, Uragiri no Ai, but we can talk about her after we've discussed normal Ai. Then is Ishida, who we discussed earlier. Then is the game's final boss, Shibata. He's got everything you could ever want from a boss character. He hits like a truck, has fantastic moves across the board, and he looks sick as fuck. Hey, 6 AM editing height here. I'm just realizing that Shibata has several Tekken moves. I saw a Death Fist. This is just Heihachi's Hell Sweep, and his Heavy Punch is a Wind God Fist. Oh, Ai is fucking evil. She's the closest thing this game has to a Shodo, and dear god does she not let up. Her Yoga Fire type move is an insane space control tool. Both of her supers are absolutely ridiculous. Her damage output is crazy, she can chain a million things together, and a lot of the time, she's really safe during it too. Her boss form replaces the Yoga Fire with an overhead projectile, which is also really fucking good, and gives her an all-new third super, but she's way worse than base because her Raging Demon super, which was an insane combo tool, has been replaced with a bomb that homes in on enemies and can hit you as well. You can also be very easily punished for even using it, but if you manage to chain it into her DP super, you can do 55% with just 2 meter. And then there's Rika. She's got it all really. The best DP in the game, a projectile tool that can be used for a million different uses from baiting attacks to zoning, and she's got really good gap closers too. Her close range super is absolutely insane, and while her second super has an insanely long wind-up time, when it lands, it launches your opponent and makes them open to being comboed all over. She also has an insane dive kick which can lead into some crazy mix-ups, ending with her being plus on block. And that's the entire roster of Sonic Council. It's shocking how well-rounded and balanced this game is all things considered, and I pray that one day it will catch on in the FGC the same way Asuka 120 did. And I really hope it also ends up getting a fan-made update patch that makes the game the best it could possibly be, because it totally deserves it. And thus concludes my look at a bunch of obscure Sega Saturn games. Some were more niche than others, and some were definitely way worse than the rest, but all of them were at the very least interesting. If you enjoyed the video, I'd be really happy about a like, comment, and subscription. I also have a Ko-fi you can donate to help me fund stuff for future videos, in the case I ever need to do something like buying and importing the Sonic Council manga again. And with all of that said, I wish you all a wonderful morning, day, evening, or night. Cheers!
I got stacks to the roof, get your funds up.